Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Sketchy Legends. In this week's video, we're going to dive into some highly debated topics over the years. There are many people in this world who believe in an existence of aliens, and there are many people who don't. I for one have an extremely irrational fear of aliens, stemming from a movie I saw when I was younger called The Fourth Kind. So, without further ado, sit back, relax, and enjoy this week's episode of Sketchy Legends. In our modern times, it may be hard to understand the extent of panic that has surrounded the thought of alien invasions in the past. We're so bombarded by pop culture and the constant flood of information that some forget that this wasn't always available. For the first half of the 20th century, there was hardly any literature or references in the media regarding aliens. Television was still fairly young at the time, and movies were few and far between. Some of the only contact many people had of the theory of life in outer space was from H.G. Wells' book War of the Worlds, published in 1898, which was popularized once more in 1938 as a radio drama produced by Orson Welles as a Halloween special broadcast, rewritten to sound as though it were a live news report. Though at the beginning of the broadcast they had stated that this was simply a theatrical interpretation of a classic story, those who had tuned into the radio late had not realized the broadcast was a work of fiction, as it had appeared to be a legitimate newscast. The broadcast had caused panic throughout the country, leading many people to believe that there was an alien invasion. This event had a sort of awakening effect on the general public. They would do their own research, look into their sources further, and question everything before believing. In the summer of 1947, Mac Brazel awoke to start his day tending to his sheep pasture in the hot New Mexico sun. While making his way across the field, he had noticed something out of place. The sun was glinting off an object in the distance on his property. Brazel cautiously walked toward the object, unaware of what it could possibly be. However, when he finally reached it, he was more confused than anything. Brazel was looking at a material that he couldn't identify. It was described to be a large crumpled pile of metallic sticks, chunks of plastic and foil reflectors, surrounded by a heavily glossed paper-like material, all held together with some kind of tape. Unaware of what to do with the debris, Brazel made a call to the local sheriff, who had believed that the pile had fallen from the sky. With his concerns of it possibly being some sort of military object, the sheriff made a call to the local Air Force base at Roswell Army Airfield, or RAAF for short. Almost immediately after the call was placed, Army officials surrounded Brazel's property, loading up all the debris in armored trucks and hauling it off, leaving Brazel with even more questions than answers. What had really crashed onto his property? The local newspaper, the Roswell Daily Record, had caught wind of Brazel's report to the local authorities and ran a story on the front page of their July 8th issue titled RAAF Captures Flying Saucer on Ranch in Roswell Region, creating a UFO uproar across the state, and eventually across the country. However, the next day, the RAAF had made an official statement to the paper stating that the wreckage was from a crashed weather balloon and nothing else, that there was nothing to worry about. Yet, even after the military's official account of what had taken place, those who had seen the photos of the wreckage in the newspaper knew that the government had to be lying, that there was more to the story. For years, many people from across the world had flooded to Roswell, New Mexico, to the crash site to conduct their own research. They would interview Brazel and the sheriff and scour the field for anything left behind. They would try to get more information from the local Air Force personnel to no avail, but would continue to make accusations of the government cover-up. In the 1950s, the RAAF had conducted a series of dummy drops, where they would drop a human-like object made of aluminum bones, latex skin, all wrapped in bandages from high altitudes. They had stated that the reason for the dummy drops was to test the effects on the human body in case their pilots were to encounter a high-altitude fall. However, when they would drop one of these dummies, the military would quickly race to the landing site, snatch up the body, and leave as quickly as they could, as though they didn't want anyone to notice. Even though the Air Force was careful most of the time to make their drop on target, not on civilian property, a few had escaped the landing zone. Those who had seen these so-called dummies firsthand believed that they weren't just inanimate objects. They had looked otherworldly, and many had come to the conclusion that the US government was torturing and experimenting on extraterrestrials. For 3 decades, there was little information to go on. Independent investigations were going dry, and the flood of curious people flocking to New Mexico had slowed down until 1978, when an Air Force officer who had been on location the day the debris were found and removed from Brazel's ranch had stepped forward to speak to Stanton Friedman, a Canadian nuclear physicist who had taken an interest in the Roswell case. With information from the Air Force officer who had appeared to be a reliable source, Friedman had conducted his own research, with the result being a documentary titled UFOs Are Real. Friedman's documentary had reinvigorated the interest in the Roswell incident, making public claims of government cover-ups once again, and that the materials the debris were made up of was not the same material of a weather balloon. He had also created a hypothesis to what may have actually occurred, but was unable to state any legitimate proof. The entire documentary was more anecdotal than factual, but didn't stop the rise in interest. In 1994, the US government had stepped forward with what they had stated was the truth behind the Roswell incident. The Pentagon had just declassified information on something they called Project Mogul. The records for Project Mogul described an atomic espionage plan that had begun during World War II, in which the military had collaborated with geophysicists and oceanographers from Columbia University, New York University, and the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution on Cape Cod. They were to create a series of high-altitude balloons to carry low-frequency sound sensors into the troposphere, the part of Earth's atmosphere that acts as a sound channel. The troposphere can carry sound uninterrupted for thousands of miles, similar to the way sound travels through the ocean. The devices were to be used to send microphones into the sound channel in hopes of eavesdropping on the Soviet Union's nuclear tests. They stated that these balloons, which were made of neoprene and had radar reflectors for tracing, were launched from the Alamogordo airfield in the summer of 1947, where one of them had crashed in Brazel's sheep pasture. When the RAAF got the call from the local sheriff about the unknown debris, they were stumped as well. Project Mogul was top secret and very few knew about its existence, including the RAAF. The story they had fabricated about it being a crashed weather balloon wasn't just to cover up something they had done, but a story created to buy them some time in order for they themselves to find the answer. For several years, the interest in the Roswell incident stayed on the top of many UFO enthusiasts and conspiracy theorists' lists, though they had seemed to hit a wall regarding any new information. That is, until 2012, when a man named Joseph Beeson had stepped forward with some astonishing possible evidence. In 1998, Joseph Beeson's sister was working cleaning out an estate of an elderly woman who had passed away. She had stumbled across a box of old slides and felt as though it would be a waste to throw them away, and felt as though they might be important. She had taken them home and placed the box of slides on her bookshelf and, subsequently, forgot about them for 14 years. While cleaning up her home in 2012, she had stumbled across the old box of slides. Remembering where she had acquired them from, she had decided it was finally time to crack open the box and take a look. She set up a slide projector to display the photos on her bedroom wall, and was blown away by the clarity and beauty of these old images. They seemed to be very early form of color photography, and showed images of cities and villages from all around the world to very influential military men from important points in history. Believing that they may have some historical and educational value, she took them to her brother Joseph, who had worked in book publishing. Upon taking a look at the images and doing a little of his own research, Joseph came to the conclusion that the slides were Kodak's groundbreaking color photo technology from the middle of the 20th century that they had trademarked as Kodachrome. When he looked through the slides, he was just as blown away as his sister was, especially at the close-up, clear shots of General Eisenhower, taken right after World War II and before he was elected president. While flipping through the last few photos, he had pulled a couple of slides out of the box that had been individually wrapped in parchment paper. When projected them onto the wall, his stomach took a massive nosedive. The image of a thin, brown body laying in a glass case appeared on his wall. It had a triangular skull, elongated eye sockets, and a thin, slit-like mouth. Its arms and legs were shriveled and small, making the creature look extremely delicate. Joseph then decided to take the slides to an old business partner of his named Adam Drew, who had been working on some freelance sports photography. Adam had always been a skeptic, never believing in conspiracy theories or government cover-ups, and hardly ever even thought about UFOs. However, he knew the moment that he saw the last image that he was looking at an alien. Joseph worked hard at convincing Adam that they needed to research this and create a documentary about their discoveries, which they called Kodachrome and released in 2015. However, the two men needed to find a way to learn more about these photos, where they came from, and what they were involved in order to have any sort of validity to their feature film. They were able to trace the images back to the home of a deceased woman named Hilda Blair Ray, who had lived near Sedona, Arizona. They had discovered that Hilda was a pilot and one of the first women to graduate with a law degree from the University of Minnesota. She had later married a geologist named Bernard, and the couple soon moved to Midland, Texas, where her husband was the head of the West Texas Geological Society. The couple had never had children and frequently traveled the world, photographing places that many Americans during that period of time couldn't even dream of visiting. With many of Hilda's photos being of General Eisenhower and being such close-up, stunning images, Joseph and Drew came to the conclusion that Hilda had to have been friends or at least acquaintances with Eisenhower's wife. A relationship with the Eisenhowers is very important to this theory. In fact, it's the key that locked everything into place. In 1954, President Eisenhower was vacationing in Palm Springs, California. The president was to attend a scheduled public dinner on Sunday afternoon. However, he never showed. In fact, he had vanished for several hours. When the White House was questioned about his whereabouts, they had stated that the president had chipped a tooth and had to see a dentist to get it fixed. However, when investigators had looked into the situation further, they had found no record of the president seeing any dentist or doctor on the day in question. Several years later, a man named Milton William Cooper, who claimed that he was on the Naval Intelligence Briefing Team, stepped forward claiming to have read classified documents stating the president's whereabouts on the Sunday afternoon vanishing act. He stated that Eisenhower was pulled from his vacation and relocated to Edwards Air Force Base, where he had conducted a meeting with two Nordic-looking aliens with blue eyes, while a third one kept watch. He stated that the aliens were trying to warn Eisenhower that the Earth was on a path of destruction, but they wanted to create an alliance with us. However, they had a few terms. Our race would have to put a halt to nuclear testing because it was going to destroy our world. Another was their want for a couple of humans to experiment on, of course, with no harm befalling them. Once their tests were complete, they would release them back to their homes. Cooper stated that they were unable to come to an agreement. However, they had met 2 more times after that, one of them being in Holloman Air Force Base in New Mexico, about 130 miles from Roswell. While Cooper can be a hard man to believe at times, being a devout conspiracy theorist, with other beliefs being that the Illuminati was also involved in plans with extraterrestrials, and that AIDS was a government-created virus used to decrease the population of Africans, Hispanics, and homosexuals, many people chose to put faith in his word about Eisenhower's secret meetings. However, what may be the last piece to the puzzle was that Eisenhower's own great-granddaughter, Laura, had stepped forward, revealing that her great-grandfather had told her stories of meetings with aliens while he was in office. Thank you so much for watching this week's episode of Sketchy Legends. I know it was a little bit of an odd one, but sometimes the odd things in life are just what you need sometimes. Let me know what you think about all the theories discussed in this video, and let me know if you believe that there is any validity to Cooper's theory. While you're at it, be sure to give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. If you want to see more of my artwork and keep updated on my videos, you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at j_DeFioreArt. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.